Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely chilling Portland mystery, one where the absolute most crucial witness to a terrible crime wasn't a person at all. Actually, it was a smartphone. We're talking about the girl who texted after she died.
Okay, picture this. It's just before midnight in downtown Portland. Heavy rain is coming down hard, making the deserted streets completely slick. At 11:58 p.m., 27-year-old Emily Foster is spotted running into an empty, dimly lit underground parking garage. And you can tell she is absolutely terrified. She keeps looking over her shoulder. At 11:59 p.m., her phone battery is flashing red. It's at exactly 1%. But in that tiny, desperate window, she manages to send out one final text message. The message goes through. And then, right at midnight, Emily just vanishes into the shadows. 30 seconds. That's literally all it took.
Which brings us to that final message. Right as her phone was dying, she sent this. "If you're reading this, I'm already dead." I mean, wow. This wasn't some standard missing person's plea for help, you know? This is a definitive, chilling declaration. It's a message from someone who fully accepts that the absolute worst has already happened to them, right as they're hitting send. It really sets the stakes for this whole crazy case.
So, the very next morning, police arrive at that same parking garage, and they walk into a deeply unsettling scene. Emily's car is just sitting there, totally abandoned, but the engine is still running. Her purse, with all her ID and cash, is left sitting right there on the passenger seat. But Emily herself is nowhere to be found. Detective Michael Carter gets assigned to the case, and his first move is to request a subpoena for Emily's phone records. He figures it's going to be a total dead end since her battery was at 1%, right? Well, what he actually finds defies all logic.
3. That is the impossible number of days Emily's phone continued successfully sending text messages after she vanished from that parking garage. 3 whole days. How on earth is a phone with a totally dead battery belonging to a missing woman who literally just claimed she was already dead still communicating with the outside world?
Okay, let's dive into this, because the actual contents of these messages are what absolutely baffled Detective Carter and his team. Listen to these. "I can hear footsteps. He's still watching. And most pointedly, don't trust Jason." Now, Jason Reed was Emily's 31-year-old boyfriend. These texts read like real-time dispatches from a woman who is actively being hunted down. They heavily imply she's alive, she's on the run, and she is acutely aware of her surroundings. But the digital forensics, they told a completely different, physically impossible story.
So, how can one phone be in 3 places at once? That's the provocative question we have to ask here. When police traced the cell tower pings for these horrific messages, they found they were originating from entirely different parts of Portland, all within mere minutes of each other. The physical geography of the city makes this travel speed completely impossible. I mean, no person, no matter how fast they're driving, could get a phone to ping off a tower in the north and then literally 3 minutes later ping off a tower in the far south. It was like a technological ghost story.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the physical evidence completely contradicted Jason's alibi. When investigators pull the CCTV footage, it shows Emily entering that underground garage, but she's never seen leaving. However, just 10 minutes later, Jason arrives at that exact same garage, and he leaves alone shortly after, carrying Emily's very distinct backpack.
Armed with this incredibly damning CCTV footage, police bring Jason in and execute a search warrant. They don't find Emily, unfortunately, but they do find her discarded phone case. When the forensics lab breaks down the fingerprints on that case, the results are super illuminating. 70% of the prints belong to Emily, which, makes perfect sense. 15% belong to Jason, confirming he handled her device, but it's that final 15%, an entirely unknown fingerprint, that throws the whole investigation into total chaos.
Get this. When investigators ran that unknown fingerprint through the national database, they got a hit. But it was a hit that literally made their blood run cold. The fingerprint belonged to a man who had officially been dead for 8 years. 8 years! Let that sink in for a second. An 8-year-old cold murder case was suddenly directly linked to a woman who just vanished 3 days ago. The Portland police were basically forced to immediately reopen this totally dormant homicide investigation just to figure out how a ghost left a fresh fingerprint on Emily's home case.
Following the money trail of that supposedly deceased suspect led detectives to a major breakthrough. They discovered this small, unassuming storage locker on the outskirts of the city. But it wasn't rented by the dead man. Actually, it was secretly rented by Emily Foster under a totally fake name months before she disappeared.
When detectives finally cut the lock and opened the door, they quickly realized they hadn't just found a storage unit, they had found a literal war room. Emily had stockpiled printed screenshots of threatening messages she'd received. She had a disassembled hidden camera, a handwritten notebook just filled with names, including, by the way, the deceased man whose fingerprint was on her phone, and sitting right smack in the center of a table, a single USB drive. Every single item here was a deliberate trap she had methodically set for her pursuers.
And written on a piece of masking tape attached to that USB drive was this chilling label: "If I disappear." That proves this wasn't some sudden, random abduction. Emily Foster knew exactly what was coming for her. She had accepted her fate, but she absolutely refused to go quietly. She meticulously curated this entire locker as a breadcrumb trail for the police, just waiting to be found if her worst-case scenario came true. That drive held her ultimate insurance policy, a secret recording. The USB contained highly incriminating security footage that Emily had somehow managed to capture on her own. The video clearly shows her boyfriend Jason meeting in secret with another man. And yeah, it was the exact same man who supposedly died 8 years ago. On the tape, you can hear them actively discussing how to make a disappearance look like a tragic accident. But the crazy part? The video doesn't just naturally end. It cuts off abruptly, right as Jason looks directly at the lens, realizing Emily is there filming them.
So the crucial point is, when faced with the CCTV footage of him holding her backpack and that undeniable secret video recording, Jason completely caves. He confesses to stalking Emily, he confesses to the whole conspiracy. But during the interrogation, he vehemently, aggressively denies one specific thing. He swears up and down he did not send those post-disappearance text messages. And you know what? Detectives actually believed him. Because if Jason was arrested and the other guy was detained, who on earth was sending texts from all across the city?
Well, this is where digital forensic experts uncovered Emily's brilliant final twist. She wasn't texting from beyond the grave, and she obviously wasn't running around the city with a dead battery. Weeks in advance, Emily systematically drafted those terrifying messages. She utilized automated marketing and scheduling software, routing the messages through cloud-based proxy servers stationed all over Portland. She basically turned her phone into an automated digital witness. The messages were triggered by a dead man switch she set up. When she failed to log into her computer for 24 hours after entering that garage, the software automatically executed her final commands.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer genius of Emily Foster's survival tactic. She knew Jason would dispose of her physical phone, right? But she also knew the police would trace the digital network activity. By scheduling those messages to ping off different proxy servers around the city, she guaranteed the police would realize the texts were a complete anomaly. It forced them to dig deeper. It forced them to pull the CCTV. It forced them to find that storage unit. Because of those automated, scheduled messages, the police solved her case. She literally orchestrated the investigation of her own murder from beyond the grave.
Some victims leave behind fingerprints, and some leave DNA. But Emily Foster left something even more powerful: data. She weaponized her own digital footprint to ensure the truth could never, ever be buried with her. It really makes you stop and realize just how much of our lives, our secrets, and our stories are locked away in the cloud, just waiting to be triggered. Which leaves us with one final haunting thought to consider today. What truth is waiting inside your digital footprint?